Hello there, and happy Tuesday, I think it is. Sometimes Tuesday is the longest day. Thanks for joining me live. My name is Julie Hirschberg. I'm a neurologic physical therapist. I am the owner, founder of Reactive Therapy and Wellness, and I have been just really enjoying going live all month to bring up different parts of functional neurologic disorder awareness. And today we're going to talk about occupational therapy. I'm not an OT, but I get to work with amazing OTs and I've gotten to teach with them. And I have a very, very great article to bring to you today to share how OTs help to manage functional neurologic symptoms. And I am so excited. If you are a clinician, we actually have these two OTs from this paper coming to Brain Bytes. It's a very special bonus that we just added today, and they're going to be coming in June to share all about the sensory modulation approach, training as a type of intervention to help with functional neurologic disorders. And so this bonus, by the way, if you're a clinician, expires today. So you have to join tonight our Brain Bytes community, and you can check it out at reactiveeducation.com/brainbytes. So be sure to check that out. But I'm so excited. I met one of the authors, and yes, Sam is saying I just started with my FND OT recently in Boston. So they're both from Mass General. I met Julie McLean. We put together a course for the combined sections meeting just 2 months ago, really, and presented it in San Diego. And I learned so much from her, and as I have from the OTs that I get to work with at Reactive. And I asked her, and she invited her colleague, Jessica Ranford, to share in our Brain Bytes group. So we're so lucky because we have this interdisciplinary group of PT, OT, psychology, speech therapy, other clinicians, and there's so much that we can all learn and use when it comes to the sensory system and sensory modulation. So I'm so excited. Let me share the title here of this article. It was just published, and Julie McLean had told me, like, oh, wait until we publish our article. It's going to be so good. And it is. I think what I love about this, it's not a research study, but it really is a step-by-step how-to of how they do therapy and incorporate sensory modulation training into OT. And I think there are components of this that are so applicable to all clinicians. So I'm so excited they put this out here. And it's not very often that you get an article where it has really practical advice, like, and for OTs, gosh, if you've never seen FND, you should read this article. It literally talks through step by step of how they do things. I'm so thankful to these two authors. I'm so excited they're coming to Brain Bytes. And I think particularly, somebody asked me the other day about resources for seizures, functional seizures too. I think this approach is very important because I think the sensory system, the autonomic system are often implicated in functional seizures, as those systems are in many functional symptoms. So, oh, great. Lily is joining us. I was just talking about seizures and how this, I would highly recommend this article to any clinician who is working with folks with functional seizures. So this just came out. It's actually in press. It's in the journal Neurology Clinics, and I just want to share some of the great pieces. They've got great figures and great tables and all of the things. So I want to get into this, and again, I highly recommend the article. So here's the first figure that they share. And this is one of the figures that Julie McLean had in her presentation at CSM. And this is coming to Brain Bytes too. So Lily, I know you're in Brain Bytes, so you've got to join us in June when we're having this special session on FND. So when looking at this model of sensory processing. So they base this on the 4-quadrant model and really understanding. So as usual, this is my disclaimer, you really don't want to run into treatment before assessing this. You wouldn't just throw these sensory modulation pieces until assessing. And that's actually, I want to say, they have this broken down into different modules, kind of different stages of treatment. Stage 1, module 1 is sensory assessment. And knowing where a person is in this continuum of either low sensory registration, sensory sensitivity, sensation seeking, or sensation avoiding. Now, what's great is that the group at Mass General and these 2 authors have explored this continuum in people with FND and have seen that people with FND do tend to cluster, and honestly, I've seen all sides of this in FND, but sensory sensitivity and sensory avoiding for sure. But honestly, I'm working with somebody right now that's sensory seeking, so it's not that all people are in these levels. So and the 4 quadrants are either low or high. That's along the left-hand side, the neurologic threshold continuum, or passive active. That's on the behavioral response continuum. And my dog is joining us for this live. Hopefully it doesn't get too loud for you all. So they start this off. This is really important when it comes to assessment. Now, I know that we use the adult and adolescent sensory profile. There's also one for kids that is a self-report questionnaire, really helpful to discover these profiles. So first step is the assessment, or what they would call the first module is the assessment. And I've got the article here because I don't want to get this piece wrong. So let me show you this as well. So again, these are all from their articles, or from the article. And I think, let me grab the right one here. Yeah, so you can see the sensory modulation training protocol and the step-by-step here. So step 1, 2, 3, 4 different goals. The first goal being that facilitating self-awareness of the sensory processing pattern. So this goes from that self-report questionnaire, interviews, assessments. The second goal is starting to explore self-regulation strategies. The third is expanding those because you want to take those out into the world, which is really step 4, repertoire expansion and skill enhancement. We can't expect sensory strategies that work in a very controlled environment in the clinic, for example, to just immediately translate to going to Coachella, going to a big concert, right? So we have to grade those pieces and expand the repertoire and the skills to get there. And then within this, you'll see those modules that I mentioned. So 4 goals, 8 modules. Sensory assessment is first, then providing education and really understanding where that person is coming from and how that relates to the functional neurologic disorder symptom. Educating and exploring arousal levels, self-regulation, ADLs, all those pieces throughout the day, identifying sensory activities that provide self-regulation and manage symptoms. This is where we start to see symptoms decreasing. Exploration and trial. So this is module 5 of sensory activities. Developing a personalized sensory diet. This is one of my favorite things that our OTs do so well. If you're not familiar with the term, but it's not a diet from like a nutrition standpoint, but it really is. What are those pieces? What are those nutrients in the sensory systems that you need? But Saida, I'm just getting some feedback that maybe there's some things dropping. Let me know if my sound is dropping or the video or anything like that too, because sometimes I need to start over. So do let me know. And then finally, so I'm sorry, we were on developing a sensory diet. That was number 6. Then 7 is modifying that and applying it to the daily schedule. I think this is really important because I think it's so helpful to have a partner troubleshooting with you to, and that partner is your OT, to really see how the sensory diet works in your everyday life. And then application of all of the sensory modulation strategies to daily life. So that is module 8. Can you see, therapists, how helpful this is? Like, this article is gold. If you are just getting started in FND, I think this article is gold. It takes you step by step. And I think you should be joining our community of providers because these 2 authors are going to be joining us live. So amazing. Okay, so there's a couple of more pieces that I want to share from the article here. And I think it is this next one. Oh, I just shared that. I'm so sorry. They all look the same on my little screen here. And let's pull up this one. Yeah. So table 2, this was something that I really loved and learned our OTs do as well, is look at and have the person self-assess what types of sensory inputs are calming versus alerting. And this is such a helpful check off to do with people, not just this chart, by the way. There's a much longer list that you can use to have people check off kind of calming sensory input versus alerting sensory input. This is so helpful to see how the person is regulating throughout the day and what kinds of inputs are coming in. Oftentimes when we see people with like functional seizures or symptoms that come and go, it's not always clear what triggered it. And honestly, it's not usually one trigger. I think that's the thing. It's not one smell or one sound or, being in a certain environment. It's typically what I found is many pieces stacked up together. And so understanding for that person, because it's very different per person, what are those characteristics of sensory input that bring calm versus alerting. And some people need alerting sensations at sometimes, and some people need calming. A lot of times when we think of nervous system regulation, we think people need like to be more peaceful and restful and relaxed and calm. And actually, sometimes people need alerting. They're actually in a freeze state or a dissociated state and might need a little bit of rocking and movement and music that's more alerting to their system. So I think that's, a little bit of a kind of misunderstanding of the autonomic and sensory system is that we need to like calm things down all of the time, because we've definitely seen a person who has lots of calming activities during the day, and they are they're almost dysregulated because of the calming activities. Somebody's telling me to take a sip of water. I actually have a lovely sparkling beverage right here. I'm not sure why you're saying that, but I'll take your advice and thank you. And it might be because sometimes I talk so fast I get out of breath. So I get excited about this stuff. Thank you. Okay, so let me go to one other piece here. And so we talked about this. So this is the sensory diet. I love this idea so much. And again, if you're an OT in the sensory world, you're really familiar with this. I think not all other therapists are really familiar with this, so I think it's helpful. And maybe not even all OTs. But some of the sensory diet strategies include things like sensory meals, sensory snacks. I love this idea of snacks. I love the idea of exercise snacks too, by the way. Environmental supports, some hideout or safe spaces. I think this is really important. And then leisure activities. I just got back from the beach watching, well, not watching, but my daughter was at practice and I leisurely walked along the beach. That was a leisure activity. So when an OT is working with somebody through a sensory modulation training program, they would be looking at these pieces for that person. They're very specific to the person throughout the day. So that's a little nutshell of the sensory diet. One of the things that was really helpful is when Julie McLean did this portion in our CSM course, she actually took us through a case. Now I'm going to share, I don't know that I got it. This was my favorite part, actually. And it doesn't look like I can bring it up. So I'll stop sharing here for a moment and I'll give you an example of it. And Sam is sharing that her OT and I are going through this right now, and this is helping me see. I'm so glad. First of all, you got a good OT that is doing this with you right now. So good. So the last piece, and I almost just want to show you it here. I don't know if you're going to really be able to see it. No, it's going to have a lot of glare because of the light. They shared this really lovely in their presentation. So this is coming to Brain Bytes, but it is this arousal continuum, and kind of like what I was telling you, how some people actually need some more alerting sensory input. In the middle of this continuum, so you kind of imagine like a wavy line because it's not a straight line. In the middle of the continuum is the just right balance of arousal, of nervous system arousal. This is where the person performs the best, they're functioning really well, maybe not even having a lot of symptoms, they're alert and focused. I know for me, that zone is in the morning for sure. I'm an early bird. They're not always time delimited though. On the lower end of the spectrum is the low level. This is sleep. This is shut down. We do need that, right? We need our sleep. We need the ability to shut down and have low arousal. But this might be that where that person feels really, really withdrawn, avoiding. They might be feeling really fatigued and low energy in that low arousal level. So we have low arousal, we have that middle zone, which is the just right balance of arousal, and then we have high arousal. And this can also lead to shut down. This is where a person may feel overly stimulated, anxious, over responsive, very sensitive to all of the sensory stimuli. And this is a really great tool. We use this all of the time with people, by the way. Like, this is a tool that I think PT, OT, speech, psychology are all using something like this to help that person reflect on what are those things that may help them stay in that just right balance. What are the things that may go into hyperarousal? And what are those things that may lead to a very low arousal as well? And this is where the sensory diet comes in. What can you build into your routine, into your day to modulate the sensory system in terms of how that contributes to the levels of arousal? Because we want to be at our optimal functioning. And this is very, very important when it comes to FND, because usually what we will see is that overflow of symptoms. So tremor, dystonia, myoclonus, all of those pieces often in that hyper arousal state. And then we can see in contrast to that, we can see weakness and extreme fatigue, pain, sometimes in the low arousal state. Now, it doesn't mean that we actually wouldn't see some of those things together, because for sure, many people that I work with FND will have tremor and dystonia and weakness and sensory symptoms all at the same time. And a piece that's contributing to that is this sensory modulation, which, by the way, interacts with the autonomic nervous system to determine that kind of ideal level of arousal in the person's nervous system. So I find this, and I found this article, I'll put it up here one more time for you all. Highly recommended. I know it says OT, but even if you're not an OT, I think you should read this article. Outpatient approach for occupational therapy for paroxysmal functional neurologic symptoms. Sensory modulation training is an emerging treatment. And what's so good, it's not a randomized controlled trial. It's not a trial at all. It's actually kind of a how-to manual, how to do this. So if you're new to FND, whatever type of clinician you are, I think this is really helpful. Get on this. If you're on our newsletter, by the way, I'll send out links to all of this. I'll send our videos every week. It's coming on Friday. And if you're in Brain Bytes, these two authors, these two phenomenal OTs are joining us. So excited, in June. And if you're a clinician wanting to join it's an interdisciplinary crew of crazy neuro nerds, join us tonight, because this bonus session that we're doing expires tonight. So I hope if you are a clinician, you will be joining our community. Do keep sending me questions, by the way. I love that during FND Awareness Month, everybody's been sending questions, and I've been trying to get to all of them. Please send me a direct message. You can send me an email with a question. If it's a pretty complex case, it's going to take me a little bit to get back to you, because we're also doing a lot of that in our Brain Bytes group, as problem solving cases like that together. But I will get back to you. So thank you so much. Thank you for showing up and learning about FND so we can spread awareness together. And I think, and I hope, this article review actually showed how powerful occupational therapy is in the treatment of FND. I honestly feel like that's such a big component of our programs and so important. So thank you so much for joining me. Keep spreading awareness, and I will see you again soon.